Welcome back to the Road to Liberty. Joining us now is Rebecca Peerson from Right to Life of Central California. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you.
Well, go ahead and let's start off with how you got involved with just kind of your background with Right to Life first off, and then we'll get into the organization itself.
Well, I started with Right to Life of Central California in September of 2014, and I took over from their previous Director of Education. And along with assuming the Director of Education role, I also assumed the Director of Public Relations role. And so our main goal is to educate our community, not only on abortion, but on all pro-life matters. We feel that education is really the best way to get the pro-life message out there.
Yes.
I became involved with pro-life after I spent several years working with sexual assault victims in the secular mainstream world. And I saw the way that they felt and the way that the perception was surrounding some of the options that they were given and the choices that they were making. And it really became the fact that it's not as black and white as what some people would like for us to believe. It is a gray area. Mm-hmm. But without having people there to support them, to give them this information that they need, at a time of crisis, it's no wonder that women choose the decision that they choose, because they already feel the way our society makes them feel after an assault is they feel like they're being blamed for that assault.
Yes,
and so
that's true.
They feel like they have lost control. And so by making the choice when they face an unplanned pregnancy that is a result of that assault, they feel that their only option is to choose abortion because that's how they gain their control back. But they'll be the first to tell you that not only are they still in crisis when that happens, but afterwards they feel just as victimized, if not more victimized, by what happens within the abortion industry, the misinformation that they're given, and sometimes the lifelong risk and complications that they face after that. So it became really important for me to do everything that I could to help these women who needed someone to stand for them and who needed someone to help educate them. And so that was kind of the driving force behind why I left clinical education to go into nonprofit education. And I have really grown from that.
That is profound. And I hadn't actually, I've studied this issue. Academia, if you will, and obviously I'm not a female, and no female I've ever dated would ever do that, would ever choose an abortion. And so it's somewhat foreign to me, is in terms of not hitting at home.
Right.
No one in my family, it just doesn't, we weren't raised to believe in doing that. And what you said right there was extremely profound, and I have never thought about it from that point of view of an assault victim feeling further assaulted by there, and I see the truth in that.
The conversations I've had with these women who were victims of assault, who did have an unplanned pregnancy and did make this choice, what they have told me is that I could not control what happened to me, but I controlled whether I walked into that clinic or not. And they felt like at the time that was their only choice. That was their only option because that's what they were hearing.
The propaganda out there.
The propaganda that's out there. And a lot of people will say, well, how can you expect, as a pro-life advocate, how can you expect a woman to carry a child that is the child of her rapist? And what I say to that is that if a man rapes a woman, are we going to go find his 2-year-old and take his 2-year-old and kill his 2-year-old? Are we going to make the child pay for the crimes of his father? Because once we start doing that, I think we as a society and we as Americans need to be the first to say not a single one of us is perfect. And if we start living that kind of ideology, then it can carry over into every other thing. And so that's what we're seeing.
The whole.
Let me ask a question. Are you saying that you think in that case should be discouraged, or you're saying you think a woman who that happens to, that the government should force her to give birth to that baby in that situation?
Well, no, I'm not saying that I think the government should force her to give birth to that baby, but what I'm saying is that I think that part of the reason that women feel the way that they do after an assault is because of the lack of justice that they get. Because when a woman is assaulted, one of the first things that she has asked is, were you drunk? What were you wearing? Right. Were you out late at night? Were you by yourself? Nobody says to her, I'm so sorry that has happened to you. Let us do everything we can to get you justice, because you know what? It doesn't matter what you were wearing, and it doesn't matter how much you had to drink, and it doesn't matter if you knew him or if you were walking alone or if you were walking with 3 people. What matters is that you were violated, and in this country we are not going to allow men to overtrample the rights of women for control issues. But a big myth that goes around in the pro-life movement is that all pro-life advocates are these old, rich, white men. And that's what the pro-abortion side will tell you, is that the pro-life movement is ran by men wanting to control the rights of women, wanting to take away women's access to health care. And in fact, it's really the opposite. The latest Gallup polls show us that nearly 60% of people who identify as pro-life are under the age of 35.
Yes.
And we are seeing generation after generation of young people realizing that abortion is not health care. Abortion is a civil rights issue. We need to grant the unborn the same rights that we grant all human beings, because that's what an unborn child is. It is a human being. And if we will put nations at risk to protect these endangered species, why are we not protecting our own species? Why are we not protecting the most rare, which is the unborn human?
Yeah, you're right about the stereotype too. And I actually researching this in advance, and I've known this for a while anyhow. That and we talked about it, by the way, folks, prior to the show. Rebecca and I were sitting down. Amongst millennials, the youngest generation of voters, they're a majority of them. In most polls say that they support same-sex marriage. But that same majority, if not higher, are with Rebecca, pro-life, across the board. And it's a unique phenomenon that has to do with a number of things. But the fact is that they might view same-sex marriage as a right, but they also view life as a right. And you're right that progressively, since 1972 when Roe v. Wade came out, more and more generations of people, the newer generations, Generation X and Y, and all the other ones the liberal media gave to all of us, and I would be an Xer, by the way, have been more pro-life, ironically, as the laws have changed.
Right.
And the courts have been in the exact opposite of where the people have been.
Right. Well, when I talk to people who are pro-life, and we do very often have conversations with pro-life advocates who identify as what we call secular pro-life advocates, they will be the first to tell you, my basis for my belief that the unborn is a human is not based on anything religious. They say it's based on the sole fact that the unborn is a human being, and that what has happened since Roe v. Wade was passed was that we have dehumanized the unborn to the point that we no longer even recognize them for the human being that we are. And so when you dehumanize something that much, it becomes very, very easy to strip the rights away from that living thing. And so it's important that we stop calling babies embryos and fetuses and all of these other terms, and we start calling them what we are: unborn children. They are unborn children. And it doesn't matter whether they are sitting in one chair or sitting in another chair, they're still a human being. And that really, when you get down to the scientific basis of abortion, the only thing that separates an unborn child from a born child is the location in which they are in, and that is the mother's womb. And it is time that we stop dehumanizing the unborn. It is time that we stop giving prejudgments on women. And it is time that we stop pushing this propaganda that the pro-abortion side has for decades taught women, even though under the guise of we want to move women forward, What you're saying is that a woman is not strong enough, a woman is not capable enough to overcome a circumstance that has happened and continue on with her life. And that the only way for her to be a productive member of society is for her to kill her unborn child.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I knew back in I'm thinking back to girls I know that have been in a predicament. One of them also is teenage girls who,
Right.
and I remember some teenage girls at my high school getting pregnant or knocked up, and there was these phrases used,
Right.
and these phrases that were used were so terrible that it almost pushes girls into
Exactly.
the arms of Planned
Right.
Parenthood. It really does. If the girl was treated with more respect and not called a floozy and these other names,
Right.
maybe, just maybe, if she was treated with a little bit more compassion as a human being, she would at the very least say, I want to give birth to the child and then decide whether to put it up for adoption afterwards. I know some girls who very few, I don't think I know any girls that actually went to Planned Parenthood wanting, in their mind, I want to kill this thing. They were more about, I don't want this label of being pregnant, and this is an easy way to not have this
Right.
terrible
Right.
label.
Right.
So I think we got to get rid of the bad label
Right.
of being pregnant as well. And education is part of that.
Well, and education is so important because what we have seen continually, and we have seen this firsthand in undercover operations that have been done inside Planned Parenthood facilities, is that in these areas, and 76% of Planned Parenthood's abortion clinics are located in low income areas
Right.
where they are targeting women who have a lack of resources, a lack of familial support, a lack of paternal support from the father. And so when they find out they're pregnant, they know they can go to Planned Parenthood to get resources. And when they walk through the doors, they could be 9 weeks pregnant or they could be 19 weeks pregnant. They have an uncertified counselor who has no actual psychological or clinical training in counseling a woman in crisis, sitting before them telling them,
Yeah.
don't worry, it's not a baby, it's just a clump of cells. And
Yes.
it's not until the procedure is performed and finished that the woman realizes what has happened. We have read numerous stories of women who said, I asked to see the ultrasound photo, I was denied. I was told you don't need to look at it.
Oh, yeah.
We've had women be told at 21, 22, 23 weeks, oh no, it won't look like a baby, it's just a clump of cells. And meanwhile, while they're telling her this, they're ripping this baby apart piece by piece because the reality is the child is too large because it's so far along in the pregnancy, the child cannot be removed the way that they remove first trimester abortions. And so they rip this child apart and they dismember this child. But yet,
Oh,
they're
gosh.
telling this mother, oh, don't worry, it's just a clump of cells. And it's not until afterwards that the women realize what have happened. And that's where our embrace part of Right to Life's mission statement comes in, which is engage, equip, and embrace. And we have our Rachel's Vineyard program, which is a post-abortive healing retreat for women who have gone through abortions. And they get access to counseling services. They get to talk to others who have gone through what they've gone through. And it's really just a place of healing that is judgment-free, that is there for them, because that was the problem. No one was there for them before. So
Right.
we want to be there for them after.
I want to ask a question. What you're talking about is discouraging these women or young girls, in a lot of cases underage girls, to not get abortions. But in a lot of cases, they're not necessarily, if they have an unplanned pregnancy, they're not fit to be mothers. You can't just talk about the abortion itself. You have to talk about what the future. You have to talk about the future. And in a lot of cases, there's women who are just not fit to be mothers. And there was a report. I think it was like Freakonomics that
Yes.
actually,
Yeah.
Freakonomics put out a study that said legalized abortion actually led to decrease in the crime rate. Are you familiar with that?
Hang on real quick, because we got a minute till break, and we'll have her answer it afterwards. Aside, that also, just to throw out the converse of that, who knows if we have aborted the person who was supposed to cure cancer or cure HIV. Who knows if we've set science back, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. You never, because you just don't know who you're.
Well, we do know. We've aborted 1/3 of our population
Right.
up until
Well,
this
we
point,
just don't know
so-
who they would have became.
Right.
We could have
Right.
aborted the person who would have taken care of
Exactly.
diseases that are incurable and set us back. We just don't know. But we'll be back right after the commercial. Let Rebecca handle Robert's question about unfit mothers and what to do in that situation. All right, back to the Road to Liberty show. Again, joined by Ms. Rebecca Peerson from Right to Life, Central California. Rebecca, you are asked by Mr. Stark about women or girls that are clearly unfit to be moms that get pregnant.
Okay. Well, first of all, to that, I want to say I do not personally believe that any woman is unfit to be a mother. I believe there are women who are unprepared to be mothers. And there is a big difference. I believe that every woman has the innate maternal ability to love a child, to care for a child, to be that safe place that that child can call home. And that is what I think is, when we think of being fit to be a mother, that to me is my ideal. As a mother of 3, that's what I know my children need. My children need love, they need support, they need to know that I am there for them unconditionally. And I think every woman, regardless of her young age, her circumstance, her financial obligations, I believe she has that ability. I do understand that there are women who are not prepared to be mothers, and they do not have the financial resources, the emotional support, and maybe they don't have the desire to parent a child. But parenting and being a parent are two very different things. And I think that what has happened is the pro-abortion side has done a very good job of promoting this fallacy that adoption is over-flooded with children and no one wants to adopt anymore.
It isn't,
and
right?
there is we are overpopulated. And the reality of that is that according to a poll done last year, on national adoption statistics, it shows that for every one couple that receives a child for adoption, there are 37 waiting parents wanting to adopt. So for every one child that gets adopted, there are 37 separate sets of parents waiting for a baby to come into
that don't get China and
that
other
don't get
places
one.
a lot of
And
times.
so when we say, oh well, there's too many parents and the child will never be adopted, and so you saying that adoption is the answer is not the right way to go. But we know that those statistics are wrong, and we know that that is something that is promoted.
Yeah, well, I have to say personally, I have a member of my family. Him and his wife could not conceive, and they had to go to South America to adopt one child.
Right.
The other child was adopted here in the U.S. after a bunch of red tape, and then China for their little girl, who is my cousin and thriving,
Right.
and so they're just as much a member of our family as anybody else. And 2 of the 3, again, they had to go to foreign countries in order to get, adopt a child.
Right.
And the unfit mother thing, ironically, with one of the children, the mom clearly was not going to parent and unfit, but she decided to give birth anyways, put him up for adoption, and now he has a spectacular life.
Right.
And with a very loving couple, I know for a fact, and he's loved across the board by all of us. And so, one of the things that I wanted to bring up too is Planned Parenthood's origin was in poor neighborhoods, and their original stated goal was to limit the Hispanic and black population.
Right.
There's no secret there. Well, they try to bury it now. But Margaret Sanger, who is now looked up to by feminists, she was a eugenicist.
Right.
Yes.
She was a typical 1920s era eugenicist. She was a fan of Adolf Hitler and people like that who believed that there were inferior races, inferior people, and they did not deserve to live. And they didn't. And she was all about sterilizations, like Hitler was originally. all about abortion to limit the growth of certain populations, especially African Americans, but Hispanics as well. Although lighter-skinned Hispanics could slide, but Native Americans. And so they did a very successful job, and I'm going to use the word successful, not good. They did a successful job of flipping their image over the years to a rights organization versus one that was a eugenicist organization. Right. And they did a very successful job of burying their past. And I think that you guys are probably on the right path of dispelling a lot of the myths that erupted as a result of these idiots that bombed abortion clinics in the 80s or shoot abortion doctors and whatnot. That you guys, I think you're on the right path with the education aspect, because clearly that's working. And I think that it's just a matter of time before we perhaps start, hopefully we don't go in the other direction. Our government kind of is sometimes, government versus the people. Right. There's a huge disconnect.
Well, with people that are very passionate about the pro-life movement, it can be very easy. We are dealing with a very emotionally charged topic, a very decisive political topic in our nation, and it can be very easy for their intent to come out the wrong way. So one of the ways that Right to Life of Central California wants to kind of change that conversation is we host a program that is called Justice for All. It is a national training program on how to have effective dialogue regarding abortion without becoming what people tend to think of when they think of pro-life activists. And it's happened to me myself when someone asks me, what do I do? And I tell them, they immediately ask me, oh, so you're one of those people that stands out in front of the abortion clinics and shouts at the women? And I said, no, not at all. And here's why. Because most pro-life groups have found that to be highly ineffective.
Well,
and all that
does
is it pushes them away, but it pushes them into the arms of Planned Parenthood.
Absolutely.
It pushes them into the arms of the abortion clinic, because if they feel judged, why would they want to come talk to us? And so what JFA does is JFA gives you these tools that helps you create effective dialogue. And we are actually hosting a JFA seminar on the 25th of April, Saturday from 9 to 4 at New Covenant Community Church. It is completely free. We provide breakfast and lunch. We provide all of the materials, and it's free to attend.
April 24th or 5th? April
the 25th. Saturday, April 25th from 9 to 4 at New Covenant Community Church. And like I said, it's completely free to sign up. It gives you amazing tools and dialogue. It's something that our organization has been using for years. We found it to be highly effective. All of our staff is trained by JFA. A lot of our staff are actual JFA mentors who also conduct the training and help. And we do outreaches at Fresno City and Fresno State the following week.
Okay. Marcus, do you have any questions before we wrap it up with Rebecca?
Yeah, I have a lot. Who pays for Planned Parenthood?
We do.
The taxpayers.
And there's a big myth that because of the law that was passed, that was the No Taxpayer Funded Abortion Act, that Planned Parenthood does not receive any taxpayer funding. The way that they do this is that they do receive taxpayer funding. They use it for what they call women's health services. And they like to tote that they do this for breast exams and mammograms and things like this. But the interesting thing about that is there is not a single Planned Parenthood facility in the United States that conducts a mammogram in their office.
They refer it out.
They refer it out.
But they get
money
for the service.
to do them. So where do you think that money goes?
Well, of course, into their general budget.
Exactly. And they put out their own statistics, and they show that they say, well, only 3% of our services are abortion. 97% of our services is birth control and sexual education and HIV and AIDS prevention. But what they don't tell you about that very important pie is that 97% of services only accounts for less than 1% of their annual gross income. Because
they really play with stats, huh?
Yes, they do.
I work in stats, and that just doesn't make any sense. I don't agree that the government should tell people what to do. But it doesn't sound like you're saying that at all. It sounds like what you're talking about is educating women so that
Right.
if they find themselves in a bad situation, they already have the knowledge ahead of time to be able to think deeper about these issues
Right.
that are life-changing.
Right.
No one can oppose education. Nobody can, in their right mind, oppose educating women. Nobody can oppose empowering women, and that education does empower women, and especially empowering them in a situation where they might already be mentally vulnerable. As you said, we still have victimization, and I was looking it up recently. The 2015 report on the status of women and girls in California has given us statistics. And as it turns out, here in California, as Jeff and I talked about earlier with rape, unfortunately, at California universities, 2 million, and I want to repeat that, 2 million women in California have been sexually assaulted. That's according to the 2015 official report on the status of women and girls in California. And when we look at it, to a lesser extent, 6 million have been violently assaulted by what's known as intimate partner violence or their boyfriend. So what we're talking about is there's 2 million right now in California who've been sexually assaulted. They are, as we talked about in our college statistics
Yeah,
on rape,
we had a
there is
show
still
about
a
that.
heavy stigma on if you are a woman or man and have been
Like
raped.
like Rebecca brought up.
Exactly, going out there. So we
What
as a
she was
society,
wearing, how much
Right.
she would
yes,
drink.
yes,
That-
exactly. And I love California for its diversity and its values of inclusion and equality, but there is still so much more to go to where we as Californians have taught our women and our girls, California women and California girls, that if you have been victimized, to go forward, to talk about it, to not be ashamed, to get the help. And what I'm hearing from you is that there is still this stigma. I've been raped. I can't report it. I'm certainly not going to go talk to the guy about it. And I'm just going to do whatever anybody tells me I'm supposed to do. Wrong. We need to crack that. And I think that education is the key to empowering women so that if they are in this situation, and when we're looking at a population of 40 million, about 20 million is women, let's say, 5 to 7 is girls, we're looking at about 15 million women who are in the adult female range and not elderly, and we're looking within that 2 million of them have been sexually assaulted, and then another 6. It starts to get to be where your chances of being a woman in California and not being raped or sexually assaulted or having to deal with this issue or having a family member or a sibling or a girlfriend or a best friend is exceptionally low. And so educating yourself so that you could help friends and family and other Californians is exceptionally important. And for that, I totally support what you're doing.
Well, and part of the victimization that you talk about that we're not even including in that report is this cycle of violence of underage girls that are being brought into Planned Parenthoods. They are sex trafficking victims. They are
Yes.
child abuse victims.
Yep.
And they are being allowed to receive abortions from the men who raped them, assaulted them, trafficked them, put them out on the streets. And
Forced
we're
to,
not talking
yeah.
about 15, 16-year-old girls. We're talking about 10, 11-year-old girls going in for 1 or more abortions, and it's not reported to law enforcement because, especially in the state of California, under the guise of the Privacy Act related to reproductive health services for minors, Planned Parenthood circumvents all of the laws that require mandated reporting.
Right.
They will tell these girls, lie about the age of the father. I don't want to hear the age of the person who
I've
got
seen
you
those
pregnant.
undercover tapes
And
where
those are 100%
you're right.
real.
Oh, yeah.
All of those tapes have been provided to the federal attorney, undoctored, to show that this is exactly
Yeah,
what happens.
they've shown it
There
where
is
girls have
new-
said flat. They've told them flat out, "I am a
Right.
sex worker. I have
Yes.
the undercover."
And they say, "I don't wanna
operations,"
hear it.
Yeah, exactly. The Planned
And there are
Parenthood
numerous
staff
there are
tell them to shut their
numerous
mouths about it.
lawsuits in our country right now that have been brought against Planned Parenthood for that very, very thing. And yet we as a nation talk about how much we want to protect victims, but we're pouring money into an organization that perpetuates a cycle of violence that does exactly what we're trying to combat
Right.
against.
Yet you guys have to do your stuff privately funded. We're running out of time. We'd love to have you back on.
Please.
Anytime. I'll come back on
Please.
anytime.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you
and
so much.
It's been very informative. We'll probably have to break this down into different segments of this issue, really, next
Right.
time to
Part 1.
part 1. Yeah.
Right.
Part 2? You're willing to
Part
come back
2.
out?
Oh, of course.
Okay. Part 2. And
But-
point at the
Alright.
camera and go, part 2.
Part 2,
We're
like
coming
us
up.
on Facebook, Right to Life Central California, or www.righttolifeca.org.
Oh my God, you cut us. Yes.
Yeah, we
Well,
did-
where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, we usually ask. That's good that you just brought it up. That's she's a PR practitioner. I happen to have
So,
a degree
yeah,
in that
yeah,
area too.
yeah.
And I was, by the way, with stereotypes, I was told, don't get into that because only girls do that. No, it's a good area, and she's very intelligent. I can
Well,
tell
thank
with
you.
the.
You're
With,
well informed.
what college did you go to, by the way, Rebecca?
I went to Fresno State.
Oh,
Yeah,
Bulldogs.
we're-
I am a bulldog.
all right.
Rawr. What are they?
The V for victory. All right. Well, let's jump to break, and then when we come back, we're going to have Frank Phillips, who is from Keller Williams Westland Realty. Thank you again, Rebecca. We are
Thank
going to
you.
have you back on ASAP.